everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another MMJ Let's Play of Sekimeiya. Now, when we left off, we were kind of exploring these other rooms and trying to figure out what's going on, and I'll be honest with you, it seems like it's taking a little bit longer than I initially thought to unravel this mystery, because we're doing a lot of thinking and not too much acting, which is fine. I hope they're setting up for something crazy cool in the future, but I'm wondering when we'll start to see what the overall thread is, because right now, we don't know what the actual motive of this whole process is. So maybe we'll see what's going on. Okay, I waited for Kate and Isla to begin uncovering the cabinets before resuming the conversation with Sai. I don't think I can directly object to anything you said. Admittedly, I did think Sai's theory was ridiculous. It didn't have to be wrong, and I had come to a similar idea myself, but some of his assumptions were a bit of a reach. It was Sai's way to enjoy the incident, though, and I cared about it as well. There was no way it had been an accident. Many things indicated that nothing had happened coincidentally. The day, the smoke locations, the alarm, the recurring sin events, Naomi. Before anything else, there are two options to choose from. The plan failed, probably because of the new alarm, or the plan hasn't ended yet. It hasn't ended yet. If whatever this plan is hasn't ended, it's almost certain that a culprit must be here with us. Who would that be, and what do they intend to do next? There weren't that many possibilities. Everything had been pointing to Kate, and there's not just one way to construct it. If he's really a security member, he probably would have had an easy time setting this up. If he's not, Sai's theory is valid too. He's definitely the most suspicious person here. Unless I choose to doubt Sai, it's almost a guarantee that Kate lied about having been in the security room during the attack. There could be many reasons behind the lie though. If Kate actually is innocent, a similar plan could be worked around anyone else who got trapped. Of course, I would rule myself and Shiroya out. We've come here innocently and never expected anything like this would happen. Shiroya and I have spent our entire lives together, and I know she'd never think of doing such a thing, not even with some crazy motive against the Ashiya family that she dislikes. I myself don't suffer from memory loss or split personalities, nor do I have a particular interest in ruining my life after failing a robbery attempt. Akaro was the last person in our group. Out of the 7, I feel like he's the easiest person to suspect after Kate. He claimed not to care much about today's event, but was here from the very beginning. Earlier, his behavior was clearly off, but it'd gotten better since he woke up. It could be that he's letting the time pass so that his plan can conclude. Since he stands out from the rest of us though, he's an easy target to blame for a plan Sai and I have concocted. The same could be said for Edina and Isla, even though it sounds less likely. It's too naive to rule them out because of Isla's age though, as well as a thought-out plan could take advantage of that to lower our guard. Out of the 6 of us that were waiting for the event, only they have their early arrival justified. Isla's the only one who seemed to care about the event, but I can only truly rule out Shiroya and myself. And Sai. I don't believe he's the culprit, but if he's even crazier than he seems, he could have designed the whole thing and then messed with me for entertainment, maybe even to divert my suspicion and prevent my interference. He could be trying to manipulate me into thinking whatever is convenient for him. I don't think that's likely though. Similarly, he might have determined I'm not a likely suspect. There are 2 more options, Naomi and an unknown person. If Naomi wants to let the 12 hours run out to execute the last part of her plan, then not showing herself to us is probably a good idea. I bet she's hidden from the very beginning and will spend all the remaining time unspotted, unable to move by herself whenever she needs to. There's gotta be a good hiding spot somewhere in this huge building. Using Naomi as the culprit puts some meaning behind the alarm's trigger. Sudipo said that the only way to activate it was by breaking open the Sekimeiya cabinet, and when I heard the alarm, Naomi was the one next to it. If she silently broke it in a way that she knew would work, she could have covertly trapped us. Then, when we looked into the cabinet, we failed to recognize what had triggered the mechanism. Naomi must have avoided falling unconscious and made sure her trick wouldn't be noticed. Why would she do this? Could it be that she made it seem as if something triggered the alarm? To make it look like everything was a malfunction. She could have had something to gain, The fact that the alarm went off right after Naomi unlocked the cabinet with her key also leads me to think that the source of the alarm had to be something else. However, this could have been done purposely to make the three of us eventually say that by the time the alarm had gone off, there'd be no reason to force the cabinet open. After all, there is no way Naomi could have known I'd stayed conscious for enough time to hear the alarm. Then it could have been ruled as a malfunction, which would have allowed other things to also appear as malfunctions. But if Naomi is innocent, is there more than one opinion behind her disappearance, or option behind her disappearance? Unless she woke up ahead of time and saw the culprit, the only person that could have had a clear motive would have been Kate. She could still be trapped and walking around, but I'm not sure why she wouldn't have shown herself already if she has nothing to do with the attack. Is it actually possible Naomi is currently outside the tower? This would mean that the alarm had a delayed effect and that Naomi's not innocent at all. And I'm pretty sure what I heard in the event room was the shutter, but I can't remain totally certain. The only way she could be outside is if Naomi is a culprit. Otherwise, surely Suripo would have said that she made it out safely when we brought up her name. The only way this wouldn't have happened is if Naomi was the individual with the suitcase whose identity was kept a secret. The unknown person option was basically the same, but better. After all, with Naomi, we know the identity of the culprit by the end. However, if an unknown person had stayed with us and somehow planned to sneak out with the Sekimeiya when the time comes, we have no way to know who they were. The lobby doesn't have security cameras. When everyone evacuated, someone hid behind the reception desk or entered the staircase to the mechanical room. Once the smoke faded, they hid in a better place. Maybe after moving Naomi's body. Maybe they were in one of the rooms in the hallway, and that's why they made sure they couldn't look at the recorded footage. Once this is all listed out, there are a few extra options, like two people working together. For example, if Naomi and Kate were working together, one would cover what doesn't make sense if the other person's working alone. The two staff members could have easily designed this internal attack thanks to the knowledge they possess. Kate made us think the Sekimeiya we saw was the real deal. Now, Naomi can do as she pleases because she'll be instantly covered by Kate, who will guide all of us as the most knowledgeable person. Perhaps that's unlikely since he has no problem staying behind in the security room while we went to investigate. I'm sure there are many theories I could construct, but it would all be pointless. Everything would still be guesswork. Surprisingly, the conclusion I drew was that if the plan was still being carried out, Sai's theory was close to what I believed to be likely. I also like the whole thing. Sai is just like listening the entire time. He's just like standing there watching me think. We had to know what had triggered the alarm. It would clear up multiple doubts and remove possibilities such as the culprit having already escaped. Maybe what you said is most likely a possibility. A lot of things point to Kate being suspicious, and he knew about the alarm from the start. That would mean he's the most likely person to be carrying out a plan that involves waiting for the alarm's timer. Yes, I agree. Either him or Naomi. But with the scenario I constructed, Naomi's already taken care of. Most things are, actually. I don't know how the smoke was released, what triggered the alarm, and how Kate plans to disappear with the Sekimeiya. It's also good to note that regardless of the method, a member of security staff like him could easily design a way to release the smoke. It'd be wise to keep track of him at all times. He stayed alone earlier, and in the security room of all places. I'm very curious to know how he intends to make this plan work. He'll probably make sure that we don't come across Naomi or the body of the real Kate, if I'm also right about that. You seem pretty excited. A bit, aren't you? Aren't you looking forward to knowing which theory ends up being the correct one? Or to find out that we were both incorrect? What if this is all bigger than we think, or just a coincidental accident? I want to make a lot of theories and then have the best one turn out to be right. That would be great. You guys come up with so many freaking theories though. For example, think about this. Everything we thought about has been in part based on the call with Suripo. However, our main assumption right now is that Kate is the culprit. You brought up a good point earlier. Why did Kate say that we could communicate with the outside? You're right. If he's a security member while also being a culprit, if he hadn't mentioned it, he would become incredibly suspicious after the 12 hours passed. But if I'm right, and he doesn't work here, it wasn't very smart of him to have brought it up voluntarily. You're saying that what Suripo told us could have been planned? Exactly. He spoke very highly of Sin. What if he was speaking highly of himself, the group he works for, alongside Kate? He was dressed as a policeman and was in a car next to the tower, ignored by everyone around it. If there weren't tricks in the video, he must have been a real policeman. Wouldn't things make sense if Sin was involved with the police? That program hidden deep within the computer's folders would have been another factor of his plan designed by Sin. They knew Ashio were working on a mechanism to defeat them, so they created this plan to keep their superiority afloat, assuming part of what he told us was the truth. As soon as he began to explain stuff, my suspicions about Kate immediately lessened. After all, what that policeman was saying matched up well with the information Kate had given us. Now, if they were working together, made-up details would seem like the absolute truth, and they'd make all of Kate's subsequent claims sound authentic. Suripo mainly spoke to Kate. If they were following a script, they could confuse us greatly. Suripo is the only reliable source we think we have. And after he's done, the power conveniently went out. Not only that, but Kate was unable to contact him again. How believable is that, really? Did the Ashia family really revoke his authority, knowing they'd leave us incommunicado for 12 hours? Wouldn't it be exciting if we were in the middle of such a plan? Would you stop Sin if you saw through everything? I'm not excited about being caught up in this, I can say that much, but if I get the chance to take these guys down, I absolutely would. I won't let them get away with this. I see. Me? I'm just curious. I can't wait to know how this plan ends. Sadly, there's still a while until that. Maybe they need these 12 hours for something. A number of hours is something both Kate and Suripo said, so it would be strange if it turned out to be wrong. We'll have to see what happens. I suppose so. But if this is an ongoing plan, they won't make it obvious. If they're trying to trick the Ashia family, we might get tricked too. This is why I've been trying to think about it, to avoid being fooled. I didn't feel like saying anything else. A part of me thought that everything Sai was saying entailed pointless danger. I related to the interest, but not much to his approach. In our situation, there was no reason for us to be in danger. It was something between Ashia and Sin, and we'd just been caught up in the middle of it. Letting everything happen without giving our own input to strangers seemed like the smarter course of action. However, trying to piece stuff together on the side would probably not do any harm. Although I hadn't reacted, what Sai said was intriguing. I let Suripo's words influence my thoughts with no opposition, but it was true that Kate had been the one who let us hear them. The first thing he'd said had been that Ashia had instructed them to talk to us without proving it at all. It sounded at all strange, but instead of telling the police what to let us know, Ashia could have done everything directly. Suripo had said that Ashia had told them about the communication method. Initially, the other side would have been picked up by Ashia, who supposedly decided otherwise. While there was room for suspicion, thinking that he might have been an actual corrupt policeman was probably absurd. If he had fed us false information, he would be exposed after we got out. I could feel my head getting cloudy. The tiredness was coming back, so I tried to cool off. Thank God! The room's inspection finished without anything missing. Once again, we silently moved on to the next one. After not talking for 2 weeks, my voice had easily come out in front of Sai. As I thought, it was only Shiraya who I had difficulty talking to. Okay? At the same time, the incident had led me to think about something else after so long. It was likely I was trying to fill my mind up with it, as I knew it would fill it otherwise. Ayla didn't look tired of repeating the same procedure. She ran to the door, eagerly awaiting Kate. I noticed that every room kept a specific theme. Before leaving, I glanced at the cabinets and seen a bunch of unimpressive white pieces, much smaller in size than the Sekimeiya. Labeled A5, the last crystal room in the hallway was left before the storeroom. When Ayla turned the knob, we expected to be met with the same scene as the other rooms. Oh. The entire room was tinted black, and it was shaped differently. The ceiling and 4 walls had been deprived of their color, as a dry, dark coating had taken hold of them. Every cabinet was covered by a curtain, but instead of bright red, they were gray, black, and purple, colors that removed all of their elegance. It was the same appearance the hallways bore, We immediately understood the smoke had also gotten into the last room. We only found it a shocking sight because of what Kate had told us. I see. This makes a lot of sense. It does? Didn't Kate say that the smoke hadn't been released in any other room? Instead of clarifying himself, Sai moved forward. He stained his hand black by grabbing the bottom of the curtain, and without any care, he raised it up to show us the interior of the cabinet it was protecting. What? There isn't anything. He kept doing the same with every cabinet, and the result was always the same. I see. This is the room that was robbed. The gems found in the suitcase came from these cabinets. Yes, that has to be it. But the smoke. You all remember what I said earlier, right? That this part of the plan didn't make a ton of sense. The gems were stolen without releasing smoke in the room, which implied that there had been another goal behind the smoke. But it seems like the smoke was released in this room too. Of course, that's required if they wanted to seem like those gems were the target. The lens of the single camera was stained black, showing that they weren't being recorded. The green light had been buried under the same blackness, but it was still discernible. Kate told us the places where the smoke was released. Obviously, he wouldn't have said that if he had been sure of it, so I believed him. I'm sorry, I must have made a mistake. No, I have no idea why you did that, but this settles it. This proves you were not in the security room when the alarm went off. Sai glanced at me to let me know that he'd been correct. I was probably the only person aside from Kate who knew what he was talking about. What do you mean? Exactly. What did you intend to say now? You didn't even suspect it? This is about the 5th thing that confirms it, but this one lets me talk about it openly. After all, it also rules out a few things I talked about with Atsuki. I more or less understood why Sai said that. Without inspecting every room, Kate had felt confident in saying that only 3 different places had been attacked with the smoke, but he'd been incorrect. That indicated that he hadn't been behind the attack itself, or he wouldn't have been inaccurate. It let Sai confront him since he no longer believed he was confronting Sin, but a mere suspicious individual. I don't know what you mean. How else does this indicate in any way that I wasn't in the security room? It's very simple, but let me ask this first. Why did you say that only the hallways of the event room had smoke released in them? I had a bit of time to inspect the rooms before I found Edina's group. Every room I entered was clean, so I simply assumed it was the case with all of them. I shouldn't have made such an assumption. Alright, this proves it further. You were not in the security room. You all get it too, right? Kate has said multiple times that during the time the smoke was released, he was locked inside the security room. He also claimed to have tried to monitor what the situation was on this floor by looking through the available cameras. Not only that, but he also said that he saw the smoke rising out of nowhere. I'm saying that if he really was looking through the cameras when the smoke appeared, he would have seen it being released here. What? No, I was in a rush, so I never realized it. I don't understand it at all. You were never in the security room and you never inspected the first floor. So then, why did you say that only 3 places had been hit by the smoke? Why were you certain you could say that despite being wrong? That was the same question I'd been wondering. If Sai was right, Kate wouldn't have said incorrect information he hadn't been able to verify, which meant that he felt certain about one of the room's appearance without having seen it personally. Your assumption is mistaken. I can explain what led to my wrong assertion. When I was in the security room, most of the cameras from this floor were being displayed. It is true that I saw the smoke appearing out of nowhere, but at that time, this room's camera was not being shown. Usually, monitoring the interior of a room isn't needed if another camera shows its door. Then, I proceeded to look through all the other cameras trying to determine what's happening. As you saw with your own eyes, some of them have been disabled because of the smoke. A black screen was all that I could see through them. So, all that this room's camera showed was a black screen. This means that I was unable to recognize that one of the disabled screens belonged to this room. Since both hallways possess numerous cameras, I did not notice that there was one too many black screens. Later, since I looked into most of the clean rooms, I wrongly assumed that they were all the same. We thought about it. Did what Kate said make sense? If he'd been in their places, it's likely I would have believed it, but Sai and I had more reasons to think Kate had never been in the security room, and that he was fabricating another lie out of nowhere. Answer me this. At first, you saw the smoke being released through some of the cameras. To assess the situation, you looked at all the remaining places on this floor, and this room wasn't initially being displayed. Correct. That is why I never saw the smoke appearing here. Alright. So then you switched the display cameras. This means that at some point you switched one of the cameras for this room's. You mean to say that when you did that, you didn't realize that the smoke had been released here? Oh, I see what you mean. That eventually I must have chosen to observe the live footage of this room by manually selecting its camera, and that I would have noticed the black screen. Yes. It's understandable you'd think that, but no. That would have been slow and suboptimal in such a situation. Do you remember earlier when I was looking through the cameras talking to Suripo? The program that manages them lets me replace the 9 cameras being displayed at once for the ones that come next on the list. That's what I did. I was nervous and switched the cameras 9 at a time. I never consciously acknowledged that one of the new cameras belonged to this room. As I already said, I simply failed to recognize that there was an extra black screen. Crystal rooms all look very similar, so I didn't really miss this one. The shape of this room is completely different, though. To tell you the truth, it all threw me off. The mere sight of the screens displaying nothing but black was concerning because they're equipped with night vision, and I'd never seen them like that. I wasn't really thinking about the number of crystal rooms. I don't know, is he being shady? Do you guys think he's being shady? Kate's explanation was unconvincing, but there's nothing Sai could object to it with. At least, not without the computer's suspension timer, which Sai didn't appear to be using for his argument. Kate hadn't addressed the event room either. If he'd seen the smoke appearing in the event room, it should have been a given that our group had been trapped in the tower, but that wasn't what he said when we met. It was unbelievable that the event room wouldn't have displayed such a special display. If it really hadn't been, it meant that Kate hadn't failed to notice 1 extra black camera, but 2, and it was still very questionable that he had stopped at Edina's group before ours. Everyone else looked dubious as well, but less so, as if they hadn't entertained that possibility. Not for a second do I believe anything you're saying. I do apologize for not being more convincing. I understand why you might find that what I'm saying is strange, but I promise all of you that I'm telling the truth. So, you switched all the cameras at once and, for some reason, assumed only 3 places had been exposed to the smoke. Yes, I saw the smoke appearing in the hallways, which disabled multiple cameras. I mistakenly assumed all of them belonged to the hallways. And after that, despite not having looked through every room, you claimed that the smoke hadn't been released anywhere else but in the 3 places we'd all personally observed. Correct. I apologize for my mistake. It seems it led you to suspect something about me, but I repeat that it was all a mistake that I made in a rush. Let me be clear. I don't believe you, nor do I intend to do so. You're full of it. However, I don't know why you told us that only those 3 places had been hit, and it's pissing me off. Do you remember when you said you'd left the lobby door open? As Atsuki said, it must have been opened after the smoke had been released due to the almost none that had gone through it. Do you still maintain that? Yes, of course. Well, when you said that, I looked at the hallway A door, the one that was properly closed. And? According to you, after you left that security room, you ended up where we were without going through the event room. If you'd done that, you would have gone through the lobby, so you should have opened both doors. Which is what I did. And why did you leave the hallway A door closed, but not the other one? Because the 3 of you were unconscious in hallway B and I hurried to kneel beside you. Sure, I imagined you'd say that. However, if you really open that door, what I find most likely is that you didn't come from the security room and that you never went through the other one. Maybe it was Naomi who opened it and you had to say it because you were in the moment. You had to say it had been you because of the movements you'd already claimed you'd made. You're ridiculous. Okay, but if you never look at the cameras or into the rooms, why the hell did you say something like that could easily be wrong? Were you misinformed about the plan you took part in? That's what would be ridiculous. I already told you what happened. If you find it hard to believe, there's nothing else I can do. There were a few seconds of silence during which nobody knew what to say. In the background, Isla ignored us and kept looking through the cabinets, hoping something had been left behind. You know, it's possible you're right. It's possible that not having noticed the extra black screen and a missing crystal room is too unlikely, even under the stress of not knowing what's happening. What if this room was clean at the time? It had already been a long time since I looked through the cameras. The smoke could have been released afterwards. This wouldn't contradict anything, and it might even make more sense than what I first believed. Is this your revised lie? Do you intend to make us believe that? Well, I don't know what would have been done, but you can't deny it just because you find it unlikely. It could very well be what happened after I left the security room. The rooms all look very similar, so maybe I did see this one when I looked in through the cameras. Now I'm not sure. I don't know which of the two possibilities I'm presenting is the correct one. You know very well they're both incorrect, but yes, I can deny the second one. How could you do that? It has to do with something very important. Normally, I would have brought it up straight away. It makes this whole situation much easier to understand. Remember the two questions from earlier? Why were the gemstones stolen and how were they brought outside before the alarm went off? I'm fairly sure the answers are, respectively, to make it seem like they were the goal of the attack and because they were also stolen before the time we thought. I'm basing this on the fact that the curtains were lowered when we entered. Most importantly, they were stained with the smoke. This means that during the time the smoke was released, the cabinets were covered. If, as the Ashia family thinks right now, when the smoke was being released, someone stole the contents of these cabinets, why would they have dropped the curtains back down? No way they would have fallen down by themselves. You all see what I'm saying, right? It would have been a pointless waste of time to lower them. After the smoke was released in this room, the curtains weren't moved. Or to put it simply, the gemstones that were once stolen before the smoke was were stolen before the smoke was released. This is why sometimes someone was able to bring them outside before the exit closed. This text is a little intense. Okay, I suppose that makes sense, but how did they do that? You tell me. What's important is that they could have been stolen during the night. Then, before the exit closed, they were brought out. By releasing the smoke here too, they try to give off the illusion that the gems had been stolen at a later time, and that they had been the target of the attack. What you're saying makes sense, but I still have a hard time visualizing how this plan works. Me too. A very important thing we don't know is yet whether the alarm was taken into consideration. You said this was a top secret alarm, right? Yes, I believe it's nearly impossible that Sin designed a plan with it in mind. If you're right, that means that the smoke here couldn't have been released after you left the security room. That could only have been done if they'd known that the exit would get locked. I believe you're right. If they didn't know about the alarm, they would not have delayed the attack on this room. The smoke would have been released everywhere at once. Exactly. Can I say something? We're only assuming the gems were here were stolen before the time of the attack because the curtains were down. That makes sense, but wouldn't they have thought of it? That's true. If Sin didn't know about the alarm, they must have expected Ashia to rush in right away. Then they would have seen the lowered curtains, which would have made them think that these gems were the goal. Yeah, after all, they only believe that because they don't have access to the tower. Isn't it as if the alarm was working positively for the culprit? Yeah, like Sai said, the curtains indicated that the gems weren't stolen after the release of the smoke right away. There's no way Sin would have ignored that, right? Not if they didn't know about the alarm. If they did, and the intent was to simply let Ashia trust what they believe until the tower unlocks, then it doesn't matter that we figured it out. After all, it's not like we can contact the outside to tell them, right? You're wrong. Then they would have had no reason to release the smoke here. I'm not sure. We did have the chance to talk to the police, but it happened before we came here. I'm saying this was done to trick Ashiya into thinking the gems were the goal. However, I also think the plan must somehow end by stealing the Sekimeiya, which would directly reveal that the gems were never the goal. It could definitely be that the smoke is released to trick us, the people who got trapped. That it greatly depends on what the plan relies on. There were a few seconds of silence. Would Shin put so much effort into deceiving us? It didn't sound likely, but it was true that we had a method to contact the outside and could have informed Ashiya of every suspicious detail we'd noticed. It was strange because if the culprit had always been able to disable the communication method, there would have been no point in trying to trick us. Do you actually believe the alarm was considered? Who knows? If the gems were stolen in the night and through some method Shin was capable of, they'd leave the curtains lowered to prevent their interiors from being seen through the cameras and so that the visitors wouldn't see them before 9:10. I wasn't the guard on duty last night, so I can't help you with that. Well, they were forced to leave the cabinets covered, but doing so also indicates that the gems were stolen before the doors were open to the public. I don't know why I've approached it from different angles, but I can't form a plan that works well. In some way, these gems must have only been a side part of the plan, having been stolen before the smoke was released to close confirmation, but how everything pieces together is not as simple to figure out. I apologize that I can't be of more help. I'll assume this is Sin's doing, but I don't know what they intend to do. I'm equally clueless when it comes to how these gems could have been stolen before this morning. Sai, I know you don't believe much of what I say, but I'm being as honest as I can from the beginning. I've just been trying to help and provide you with as much information as I can. Is that so? While everyone stood still, Sai began to examine the room. Even though it looked drastically different from the others, only the illumination and shape varied. It was still a simple room that only contained cabinets. I don't think there's much else to do here. Every cabinet's empty, and the same kind of smoke was released, most likely at the same time as the other places. We should move on. Yeah, let's get going. Isla seemed happy with that proposition as well. We all agreed and left quietly to avoid any more conflict. All right. Only the storeroom remained in hallway A. We tried to enter it together, but it was too narrow for all of us. It was a stretched out, dim room. While the name implied that its purpose was to store things, the space didn't allow for much of that, and it only contained a few empty shelves and a dusty couch that looked dangerous to sit in. Even its door was of lower quality than the rest. I exited the room as Akado and Erina entered it. Sai seemed to be enjoying himself, considering different opinions in an attempt to win. If we parted from the assumption that there was a plan more complex than met the eye, I had something to consider. We'd all assumed that the gems had been stolen before the smoke had been released, since the curtains had been lowered. If anyone had stolen the gems after the attack, they also would have had no reason to waste time lowering the curtains again. However, that was a very simple indicator of the time that the gems had been stolen, and one that would not have been ignored. So, what if the curtains had been lowered again precisely for that reason, to make us, or anyone who looked at it, think that they had been stolen before the time of the attack? After all, anything else would have been the culprit's mistake. I couldn't think of an immediate reason, but the misleading us about the time or reason behind an action was a very powerful move. The effect would have never been achieved if they'd truly stolen them during the night and left the curtains down. But realistically, even though Shin could have been involved, how could they have emptied so many cabinets during the night? Hadn't the police been nearby? Hadn't the cameras been monitoring everything? Before I could determine if there was a better conclusion to reach, everyone left the storeroom, Kate returning last. We didn't all have to enter. There isn't anywhere to hide in there. What's the room even for? It's called a storeroom, but there wasn't much inside. I doubt it'd be of much use with how small it is. Things have been stored in here before, but it's true that now it looks like a useless room. I heard that this room already existed before the building started to be used for business, and it was too small to give it any other purpose. I see. The door didn't look that different from the others. However, once you opened it, the room would detract from the elegance of the place usually had. I figured that when the building had been repurposed, they must have replaced the door but left the inside unchanged. So, we're halfway done with this floor. Maybe we'll find something in hallway B. To get there, we stepped into hallway C for the first time, which contained the stairs and elevator to move through the different floors. What's this? Something immediately caught our attention. It's a suitcase, Kate. Yes, what is it doing here? We all approached it. As Sai had said, a small, conspicuous black suitcase lay in the middle of the hallway, next to the wall. Let's see, there might be something inside. Sai went ahead and unclasped it. He opened it up on the floor and exposed its interior. Nothing? That's disappointing, but I suppose otherwise they wouldn't have left it here. Did you see this when you looked through the security cameras? Edina looked at Kate. The cameras in hallway C hadn't been touched, so Kate should have been able to look through them. He didn't. Right, I would have told you if I had. I see. Does that mean that it was left after we woke up? No, of course not. Did you not hear anything I said? He never even looked through the cameras. You're still going on with that? I guess you still refuse to change your mind. I understand you can't say that you saw this suitcase since it'd be suspicious if you hadn't told us, but stop trying to reinforce your lie. It's kind of pathetic. If you truly hadn't seen anything, it would mean that someone was here after or right before we woke up. I'm not opposed to that, but I don't find it more likely than you lying. Kate looked at us. He was asking if we all thought the same, and no replies were heard. Look at where the cameras are positioned. A bit of smoke covered them, but not enough to block the image completely. One encompasses the bathrooms and the other one records the staircase and elevator. This middle section isn't shown at all. If the suitcase was here, I wouldn't have seen it. That's why none of us saw it earlier when we briefly looked through the monitors. I figured you'd say that, but that's only an excuse. If it is as you say and you inspected this floor, there's no way you never came across it. No, it is exactly like that. I inspected this part of the floor and didn't see it. Not because I didn't come here, but because, as I said, by then it wasn't here yet. I see. It's a shame the recorded footage just so happened to stop being recognized. You're right, that's unfortunate. It'd be an easy way to prove myself. Sai and Isla had kept examining the suitcase, but they hadn't found anything. No smaller compartments appeared to exist, so it was actually empty. Look, you can see the traces of smoke. Oh, right. There's no way it was hit directly, though. Yes, perhaps it made contact with it before it fully faded. I'm not sure. Then why was it left here, then? It happened after you looked around. It's only telling us that someone else is still here. But we already know that. It must have been Naomi. After she did something, she must have wanted to get rid of this and didn't care about leaving it here. It makes sense that she would have disabled the security system before dropping it. That's stupid. Footage is still being recorded, so I doubt she'd care about us not seeing her, especially given that leaving the suitcase after we woke up tells us that she's here. That's true. Okay, this suitcase seems a little suspicious, but I'm going to go ahead and leave this episode right here, and we will continue on next time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you enjoyed. I'll see you guys on the next time. AMJ, let's play.